Hey everyone, I am so excited to do this race recap because there is so much I want to share about how I was able to win the inaugural Tampa Bay 100. I'm sure you guys are interested in hearing about my pacing and nutrition strategy, but I'm most excited to share what was going on mentally the entire 18.5 hours because it was a wild ride up here. Prior to the race, I was intending to podium, but it wasn't until early in the race where I felt good and I decided that, yeah, today's the day I was going to go for a first place finish. I made a promise to myself that I was going to push hard, and no matter how much pain or stress or emotions I felt, that I was going to see what I was capable of and really push myself. And real quick, I have no sponsors, I have no obligations to make this video, but I do want to highlight Bigger Than the Trail. This is my absolute favorite charity. This charity brings awareness to mental health issues, and I've been going through a bit of a down period the last few months, and I have to say, I really needed a victory in this race. I put a lot of my emotions, a lot of my feelings into my training, and for everyone that reached out to me to make sure I was doing okay, thank you so much. You guys are the real heroes. And that's what mental health awareness is. It's not flashy, it's not any grand gestures, it's a text message, it's a phone call. So please be there for your friends, and I'm hoping that I can be there for you guys as well. This race recap will be broken down into sections, and I'll of course show some GoPro footage that I captured throughout the race just to break up the monotony so you can watch something while I'm rambling. The breakdown will start with my race plan, then followed by a course walkthrough, and then finally I'll touch on some key aspects that I think really allowed me to win this race and guaranteed my success. But the first thing I need to do is highlight my crew, who are the reason I won this race. And I need to be clear, they are the main reason I won this race, but no exaggeration. Having a crew makes a huge difference, but having an experienced crew makes the race feel like you're running it on easy mode. And anyone from the ultra running community knows that Chris and Evie Stengel are the pinnacle of crewing, so I was set up for success right from the get-go. Evie would meet me 50 to 100 yards before a crew stop, then ask what I needed, then run back to Chris and get everything ready before I got to that next crew stop. This may seem like it only saves like 1 or 2 seconds, but getting to the next crew stop, being handed what you needed, and getting right out prevented any lingering or second guessing of the game plan and kept me constantly moving. Then there was my pacer, Rich. Rich reached out to me after seeing some of my videos and asked if I needed a pacer for Tampa Bay 100 this year. This guy, he showed up ready to run and did an amazing job at pushing me, but also letting me make my own decisions and run my own race. You'd think pacing would be an easy job. You just show up, you run, you keep the runner company, but it's a hard job to do correctly. A racer wants to slow down, they want to walk, they want to take a break. They want someone to tell them, you've done an amazing job, you deserve this break, stop, sit down for 5-10 minutes. Being a fellow ultra runner, Rich knew exactly what was going on in my head and knew when to push me, knew when to praise me, and knew when to let me stop and have that stretch break when I insisted it was what I needed at that moment. Again, this was a team effort, and while I'm very proud of my personal performance, none of this would have been possible without the aid that they provided me. A huge thank you to Chris, Evie, Rich, and Malia for being there and sharing this amazing experience with me. I drafted a strict pacing plan to help me estimate some crew stops, but I found that when I give myself general rules to follow, it allows me much more flexibility and allows me to deviate from that race plan if I need to. These general rules were very simple yet crucial, and they started with what kind of breaks I was going to take. One of the huge time killers for me is stopping to take stretch breaks and little mental breaks. When added up, these 5 or 10 minute breaks really kill my time during a 100-miler, often resulting in an hour to multiple hours that could have been saved over the course of the whole race. I reduced these breaks significantly and mainly took these breaks when I had to stop and wait at traffic lights. There was also more than a few occurrences in the last 30 miles where I told Rich that I needed to stop and take a stretch break. I did take these breaks. They were, I would say, pretty frequently, probably once every few miles, but I kept them to under 30 seconds per break. And after that 30-second stretch break, we would do some pretty quick run walk intervals, and I would make up all that time that I lost during that break. The next major time kill for me is crew stops and aid stations. I told my crew, whenever you see me, do not let me sit down unless I have a visible and severe injury, and to keep any stop to 60 seconds or quicker. I ended up being so good at this that Chris told me to stop and take a 5-minute break in the chair at the 100K mark. And when Chris Stengel tells you you earn a 5-minute break, you know you damn well earned that break, so I definitely took that. The final and most important rule that I gave myself was to never walk for more than 1 minute. I plan to run the first 20 or 30 miles non-stop, then afterwards drop down to a 4-minute run, 1-minute walk strategy, with this dropping down to 3-1, 2-1, 1-1 as the race progressed. During the majority of the race, I pretty much succeeded at sticking to this rule, and only during the last 25-30 miles did I break this and do some 4 and 5 minute walk intervals. These were always one-off, occurring right after crew stops where I was eating and drinking a lot, so I wanted to have a bit of extra time to walk so that I wouldn't heave up everything. Aside from these rules to follow, I had some personal goals I was trying to hit as well. I really wanted to hit a 100-mile PR, and this was the first race since long haul about 2 years ago where I actually had a fighting chance. Earlier this year, I did run Forgotten Florida, which was a good chance to PR, but my knee was injured. I also ran Vero Beach Octopus Ultra, which is a flat ultra in Florida, but that's not a PR type of race. Go watch my video on that one. That's not a race you PR at. So even though Tampa Bay 100 has a lot of traffic stops, it's not completely ideal. It was ideal enough. My next goal was to beat Matt Clapper. And I'm not saying I wanted to beat him due to some rivalry. I just knew that he would be the baddest, most determined dude out there, and I want to see if I had what it took to stay focused and come out on top. I ran 67 hours with him in the Across Florida 200, so I knew the only way that I would win is if I got out early, stayed on top, and finished the race strong. And I also knew that I was not safe until I stepped across that finish line, because he would always be there hunting me down. Having him on my heels the whole race was stressful, exhilarating, it was exciting, and I'll get into more of this in a minute, but I think having him on my heels that whole time drove us both to getting 100-mile PRs, especially over that last 30 miles. My goal time starting this race was 19.5 hours, and since we were starting early in Tampa, I knew to achieve this, I would have to start off strong and get this 26-mile section done early before the traffic started. Running through Tampa at 5 a.m. was absolutely surreal. Seeing the usual busy streets, parks, and landmarks all empty was crazy, and I already knew that this was going to be a very exciting race. I pushed the pace early, and me and Nick Arena were pretty much leading that whole first 20 miles. We had some good conversations, but finally I kept pushing hard. He fell back a little bit. And aside from some busy intersections toward the end, I rolled up to that 26-mile aid station in 4 hours, which was an entire hour ahead of my goal time. Being this far ahead of my planned pace was a little stressful. After doing a number of these races, I've seen many times where I'm feeling great and all of a sudden it just goes downhill because I'm pushing too hard. And it's always weird trying to see if I'm actually having a good day or if I'm trying to convince myself that I'm having a good day. I made the call that this was actually quite a good day and I was going to continue this pace. However, I always knew that at any time I could start those run-walk intervals early or do shorter run-walk intervals and conserve some energy for nightfall if I was starting to feel a little tired. After the 26-mile Tampa section, there was about 30 miles of really wide biking and running trails, and I was most excited for this because I knew I could just shut my brain off and get a solid run-walk going and just really start enjoying the race at that point. Since the temperature was still surprisingly low, I decided to keep doing quite an aggressive pace, but I did sacrifice a little bit of speed in order to do those 4-1 run-walk intervals, and my main goal was to just not stop at all. This section was beautiful and just good for running. This was probably the highest point mentally in the race for me because the trails were wide and being out there with all the other people biking and running on this beautiful Saturday morning just made me feel happy. After hitting both 50K and 50-mile PRs, I knew that with this speed, I would be walking a fine line the rest of the race, kind of teetering between performance and injury. Losing first place would be tough, but dropping out of first place due to a DNF would be way tougher. I could picture everyone saying, "Oh, Mike Alberts, he went out too hard and he crashed and burned. We all saw it coming. What was he thinking being out in first place that whole time? What an idiot." And I'm not gonna lie, I was battling those thoughts too. What am I doing leading this race? Should I be conserving energy now? Why am I going so fast? I took an outside perspective. I did a full body scan and I stopped and I said to myself, "No, Mike, you're right where you need to be. You're right where you belong." And it felt so powerful saying that out loud and realizing that it was true. In my research, the inner Clearwater section to the beach looked like it was gonna be hot as hell and with terrible traffic, and I turned out to be right on both accounts. The sun was up, the cross streets were incredibly busy, and I ended up taking many stretch breaks waiting for the traffic lights to turn in my favor. I wouldn't say I had any true low points in the race, but this would probably be the most stressful time. The heat, compounded with the mental strain of leading a race for 55 miles was really starting to hit me, but I reminded myself of that promise I made and how I was gonna give this one my all right up until the very end. I reached the second aid station with Jeff Iosa trailing me in his golf cart. I got there, everyone was abuzz trying to get the aid station set up, and I actually got there as they were trying to set it up. I got there way too early. This didn't matter to me, of course, because I had Chris and Evie right there. They were my portable aid station. I loaded up, resupplied, and got out of there. I also got word that Matt Clapper was about 40 minutes behind me at this point. This was, it was good to hear that you're in the lead, you have a 40-minute lead, but with 45 miles of a race to go, a 40-minute lead, that don't mean very much. Another huge mental boost for me was getting to these aid stations before they even had a chance to set them up. It felt like I was absolutely blazing through this course, and it hyped me up and made me want to keep on exceeding expectations. Next was the beach section, which I hadn't anticipated running in the middle of the day when the heat was at its worst. Just as I was reaching the top of the bridge leading to the beach, the sun beating down, all my decisions starting to weigh on me, I crested the top and just felt this beautiful sea breeze, and it was so freaking refreshing. I realized at this point that my unintentional gamble had paid off, and while a lot of the other runners were hitting that Clearwater section in the middle of the day, it was like a sauna, there was barely any breeze, I was now running to the beach with this cool sea breeze. I would say this definitely gave me an advantage at this point in the race. Don't get me wrong, it was still sweltering, there was absolutely no shade, but having that slight amount of breeze kind of cool you down, it made a pretty big difference right in the middle of the day. Not often do you deviate from your game plan so much and receive such positive results, but I decided to take this good fortune that the Tampa Bay 100 was giving me and keep blazing on. Other than the breeze, the beach section was incredibly long. Don't get me wrong, that whole strip of beach, it's amazing, it's beautiful, but at 62 miles into an ultramarathon, there's very little time to stop and enjoy much of anything. Chris paced me a bit for this section, but right at mile 62, Rich joined in. By now, I was starting to feel pretty beat up. The whole day was wearing on me, so we started alternating between 2-1 and 1-1 run-walk intervals. This may seem like a very heavy amount of walking at this point in the race, but I was maintaining a sub 13-minute walk most of the time, so even with a 1-1, our mile times were ending up being somewhere around 10.5 to 10 minutes 45 seconds per mile. So man, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Approaching mile 70, I was feeling invincible. I was picturing the finish line, the Facebook posts, the high fives, just everything that comes with winning a 100-mile ultra. Right up until the time Evie told me that Matt Clapper had started his attack and was closing that distance fast. Over the last 15 miles, I had increased my lead to 90 minutes, but she told me that he was maybe 60 minutes behind me maximum. This was compounded by the fact that after she told me this, I saw Matt Clapper's crew drive right by us to the next crew stop, so I knew he was not very far behind me. My first thought right away was panic and distress, I'm not gonna lie. The thought of losing this race overcame my mind, and all those pictures of victory just started being washed away. For like one moment, I yet again recalled the promise I made myself to push as hard as I could no matter what, and told Rich that there was absolutely no way that I was losing this lead. We began hammering miles, we were running 3-1 intervals, and we started putting down some sub 10-minute miles. It hurt like hell, but it also felt good mentally to know that 70 plus miles into a race, I could hammer out 9.5 minute miles. At the next aid station, Coach Chris saw how fast we were pushing it, and he told me to slow down, and for the next 4 miles, take it easy, and at that 4 miles, we're gonna see where Matt Clapper is, and if he's closed the gap any further, then we can start to worry, but don't get burnt out with 25 miles left to go in this race, because there's still a lot of time to make or break it. At the next crew stop, we didn't have any update from Matt Clapper, so doing some mental math, this told me that he was still about 40 to 60 minutes behind us. Going into the last 20 miles with a 40 to 60 minute lead was a slight relief, but I know that Matt Clapper is a fierce competitor, so again, I was not safe until the moment my butt crossed that finish line. Miles 80 to 90 were kind of miserable, but also really exciting. Rich and I were cruising through downtown Saint Pete, dodging cars, restaurant goers, and a bunch of drunk sports fans. I don't think the race directors thought that anyone would be hitting this section at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night, so it was pretty surreal seeing Fergs, seeing the Trop, and seeing the pier lit up with people and just buzzing with nightlife. I lived in St. Pete for the first 18 years of my life, so just going through all these sections and I don't know, witnessing it from the eyes of someone finishing a 100-mile ultramarathon was absolutely wild. At mile 90, I had about a 60-minute lead, and both Chris and Rich told me I could pretty much power walk this thing in and not have to worry too much. At this point in the race, I was doing about a 12.5 minute to 13 minute per mile power walk, and I was still checking over my shoulder every few minutes to see if Matt Clapper was just coming in for the attack. I still decided to push the pace, but not too fast as to risk injury or just being miserable. Chris said something that really put my mind at ease, and that was, this race is yours to lose. You can only lose this race if you colossally screw up. With 5 miles to go, I was finally relaxed and I stopped looking over my shoulder as much. And I treated these last 5 miles as sort of my victory lap. The final few miles went really quick. A group of drunk girls said I was cute and asked me what I was doing afterwards. Another group said I had a nice butt. Obviously, these poor girls, these poor women, they were heavily influenced by alcohol. They had their beer goggles on, but I still accepted the compliments graciously and made my way toward that finish line. I want to say more about these final 4 or 5 miles, but there's really not much to say. I was aching but moving well, tired but excited to finish. A sprint to the finish line would be way more exciting, but what I did was a nice jog to the bay, being greeted by the race directors, the volunteers, and my amazing crew. I accepted my buckle, took some pictures, drank a blue Gatorade, and finished the night off by dry heaving on the cool, dewy grass. A perfect finish. The following in no order are what I believe were my keys to success. I kept moving the entire race and shaved hours off my time by not resting and not wasting any time. I've learned that aches and pains come and go like waves, and if you resist that urge to stop, oftentimes they'll simply just go away. And if it doesn't, stopping to take 30 seconds to stretch the calves, the groin, the hamstrings works wonders every time. I prioritized training power walking before the race, and I was able to maintain a sub 14-minute mile with ease right up until the very end. Combined with a 1-1 run-walk interval, I was doing 11-12 minutes per mile, even at my very slowest. The crazy part was the last 10 miles of the race, when I was really turning it on, I was power walking at a 12.5 minute per mile pace, and even Rich thought this was absolutely insane, this pace. Honestly, it felt really good. It was almost like those run walkers you see, that weird Olympic sport. I think it was because I was hitting different muscle groups, so it wasn't quite a walk, it wasn't quite a run, it was like something in between, so those muscles weren't being used that way, and it allowed me to just keep pushing the pace. As mentioned, an excellent crew and an excellent pacer was vital to my success. They did such an incredible job that I felt obligated. I felt like I owed them the best I could give, and that I needed to give this race my all. I like to think that I would be able to keep the pace I had without a pacer, but looking back on the race, there's more than a few times where I would have stopped and rested for a long time, if not for Rich keeping me on track with those run-walk intervals and keeping time for me. And I may even make another video about Chris and Evie and the things that they did to crew me and the things that just led to my success and that you wouldn't really think about until it's being done for you. They're incredible. I want to say more about them, but this video would be another 20-30 minutes. So I'm gonna say more about them later, but just know that they're incredible. Every time I think back on this race, it's your guys' faces I see. It's all the help you gave me. And I can only hope that I can help you as much in your future races as you did for me for Tampa Bay 100. Thank you so much. It was important that I made the decision early in the race to go out hard and to stick with it. I took a GoPro video stating my goal. This is my promise that this is gonna be a good one. It's gonna be a fast one, and I'm gonna push pretty damn hard, so let's keep getting at it. I took a Facebook post. I promised my crew. I did everything I could to make sure that I would be held accountable for going out there and giving it my all. I often half joke that I'm not the most physically talented guy out there, and in order to counter that, I need to be the most mentally tough. And I really think that for this race, I went out there and I embodied that mindset. Getting out early and leading the race, for me, was vital. I think it would have been harder for me trying to chase down runners the final miles. While it was incredibly stressful being first place in this race pretty much the entire time, I think it would have been way more stressful being second, third, fourth, and trying to catch that front runner. This was such a huge gamble in this race. It was such a major risk, but I knew the only way I was going to win this race was to get out early and to stay ahead, and I needed to take some of those risks. That's kind of the whole fun part of me about running an ultra. It's constant gambling, it's constant risk assessment, and it's pretty much a big game to see if your risk paid off and if you took the right chances throughout the whole race, starting with the first thing you choose to do, whether it be pacing, the shoes you wear, the socks you wear. Everything's a gamble. Everything rears its head at the very end, either for the good or for the bad. To sum up this race recap, one thing I did not include that you may have noticed was how awesome the race was in general. What do I think of the Tampa Bay 100? It was often hard for me to enjoy this race, and oftentimes I was thinking about nothing but my feet and the 5 or 10 feet of pavement in front of me and focusing on not blowing up. But this is such a unique race in the fact that it's not technically a race at all. And legally, it's a tour of the cities. It's a tour of the Bay Area. I can see this race changing over time, keeping the same general start and finish and the same general route, but exploring different landmarks, different trails, being routed in different neighborhoods. There's such a huge possibility for this race, and I'm so excited to see what it develops into. I really hope that Joseph and Laura can keep this going because it's such a unique event. It's such a beautiful area, and you can bet I'll be a part of future races. If not running, then crewing or volunteering, because this area, I grew up there. Even if I didn't grow up there, it took you through such amazing sections that it's a must-do event. You need to do this event. I had such an amazing time, so thank you to the race directors, thank you to the volunteers. You guys made this possible, and you guys made this a weekend that I will never forget. Thank you so much for watching. I plan to do a full race video where I take you on a tour of the Bay with me. However, this may take a few weeks because I have a vision for this video, which includes getting footage of the course in a way that you can't really do while running the race. I appreciate your patience, and I guarantee that when it's finished, it's gonna be quite an amazing ride, and it's gonna just be a fun video to watch. It's gonna give you a full tour of the Bay Area and really show you the beauty and why this area is so amazing to so many different runners. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you at the 2024 Tampa Bay 100. Now get out there and keep training so that you can do something amazing.